It's Philip here, back with Lincoln's Creations and Rentals. Today we're going to try a new project. We're going to be repairing some drywall holes. So I've got up in my master bathroom an old toilet paper roll holder that has slowly just deteriorated, and now the anchors that are holding it into the wall have pulled out at least once. I've put bigger anchors in, and overall there's just some stripping of some of the screws that hold it together. So I've got to change it up and switch to a new one. In order to do that, I've got to take the old one off the wall, and I've got to repair the holes that those anchors were in, because I'm using a slightly different style toilet paper holder, and that's just what I've got to do. So I've got in front of me some of the tools I'm going to be using to do this project, and I wanted to go through some of these items first before we head upstairs and start prepping the area. So some of the things you're going to need for this project, if you're not really an avid do-it-yourselfer and you're just trying to place really small holes, they do have a patch and paint sort of compound. This isn't it, but generally it comes in can come in a real small tub. If you're talking just real small finishing nail holes, sometimes that's real easy. You just throw it on there. I would give it a little time to set up. It doesn't necessarily dry, but you don't really want to poke it with a paintbrush or anything like that, because it still is a little bit soft. So if you're just trying to do little tiny nail holes, again, like finishing nail holes, not larger screw holes, that patch and paint stuff is quick and easy. If you're going a little bigger, say a screw hole or maybe an anchor hole, personally, I recommend some of the hand mixture stuff. So this is the 45-minute. I think they make a 20, a 45, and a 90. If you're going to be doing anything significant, I would definitely highly recommend the Easy Sand 20, 45, or 90. I generally like the 45 just because it gives me a little more working time if I'm doing a much larger area or repairing a lot of areas throughout the house all at once. The 20 is nice, but if you're trying to even out a whole wall, maybe you had some wallpaper that didn't come off or some big gashes or something like that, sometimes 20 minutes isn't necessarily enough to get a good mixture going, get it to wherever the location that you're doing the work is, and then get it evenly across the wall before it starts to harden. The best part about these compounds, when you mix them with water properly, is that you might be able to get a couple coats in a day. Now, yeah, it says 20 minutes or 45 minutes easy setup. It dries real fast, but do I ever find it to actually truly be dry after 45 minutes or an hour? No, not even close. But if I get up in the morning, I put this stuff on the wall, I come back at, after lunch or 3 or 4 in the afternoon sometime, I've got enough time to sand and put another layer on if I need it, and then get back going at it again the next morning. What I'm actually going to use today is this dust control joint compound. So this one I grabbed just because I was doing a family member's house. I just needed something quick, and I didn't want all the hassle of mixing. These are good compounds. They take, if you're doing small holes, like we're probably going to be doing today, these anchor holes, you're probably going to need a good portion of the day, if not overnight, for that to dry. If you're doing even larger than that, or a larger area, you might need more than 24 hours for some of this to dry consistently. And you do want it to dry consistently, because if you've got a really large hole you're trying to fill, it tends to dry inconsistently, it might crack, and it just means more layers on top of that. I highly recommend, when using any of these products, that you try to create a surface that has the smallest amount of gap. Now, you can't really backfill a screw hole with much, so you're just going to fill the hole with the compound, whatever mixture you're using. But when it comes to, let's say, a much larger hole, let's say even an old vent that you're covering up or something like that, or an old outlet switch that you no longer have anymore, I highly recommend cutting out the exact same piece of drywall as close to size as you can, and then putting some sort of brace behind the drywall. Generally I take an old, basically an old paint stir stick is something easy enough, and just get a couple of drywall screws and put that up behind the drywall, anchor it in, and then you actually screw onto that backer board that you put in there the hole filler that you cut out for yourself. That way you're not necessarily filling in the whole hole, you're just filling in the cracks around the hole and the screw holes. So that makes it a little bit easier. I have used some of the tape. I'm not a huge fan of the patch tape that you can use, just because you do sort of have to build it up a little bit. Might leave a little more inconsistency in your wall, but that's always an option. When it comes to mixing the sand compound, the 20, 45, or 90 minute easy sand compound, I highly recommend having a little mixer tray. This makes the world really easy. And to mix in here, you're probably going to need a much larger trowel. I've got sort of a medium to large one there and a much larger one here. This basically covers up most of the area here to mix it all in. So you just sort of have to learn what the mixture is and what's going to work for you. I always generally take with me some smaller, just plastic sort of trowels here, or paint scrapers, just in case I have small areas next to trim, next to outlet switches, that I really can't get one of these bigger ones in. You're also going to need a sanding block. I highly recommend one that also has the 45-degree angle like this does, because it comes in handy for some small spaces and sometimes trying to even out in and out of the corners. I also have with me here my respirator. If I'm doing just a real small project, again, these small holes that I'm doing right now, I don't generally throw this on. It is probably a best practice to have one of these on, to have some sort of dust mask on. And coronavirus going on right now, almost any mask you got is probably going to at least help you a little bit, so you're not breathing in that stuff. But this probably actually needs to be replaced. There's quite a bit of dust in there. But when I'm doing a small area, like I said, a couple of screw holes at once, I generally don't throw one on. If I'm going to be doing multiple rooms, multiple areas, or an entire wall, or a skim coat on a ceiling or something like that, I am definitely going to have one of those masks on the whole time I'm doing it. So these are the basic tools you're going to need. We're going to head up to the master bathroom right now, and we're going to try and prep the area a little bit, take those old anchors out, and maybe sand down the area, because it'd be nice to have it sanded down. If you do have some exposed drywall, let's say when you were taking off the wallpaper or something like that, you also took off that top layer of paper that's on the drywall, and now you see behind it sort of the cardboard colored brown or anything exposed, I highly recommend just picking up a cheap primer and priming that area first, because what you want to do is sort of seal in that exposure so that the compound itself dries consistently and doesn't necessarily the moisture soak into that. It's definitely going to help you, especially if you have bigger areas or deep areas that are into the drywall a little bit. Just hitting it real quick, an hour or two before you do this with some primer is definitely going to help. So I'm going to grab my tools and make my way upstairs. Again, today we're actually just going to use this compound. It's probably going to take all day to dry. We'll see. I mean, it is just, they're just anchor screw holes. It's not a big, huge area. We'll see what we can do with it. And I'm not going to mix the mixture. Maybe another time I'll mix the mixture for you guys and show you how using that Easy Sand 45 works and how quickly it sets up. Again, it is nice if you're trying to get, let's say, more than one layer on in a day. It'll definitely help you. If you're doing small holes and you can work quickly, you might even be able to get a couple of coats on if you need to. I try to do as few coats as possible just to get as close as I can to consistency of the wall that I need. But again, we're going to grab our stuff, head upstairs, and I'll see you. We're going to be working in a pretty tight place here. And what we're going to do is get these screws and anchors out here. And this is the area I want to replace. You can tell it's pretty loose. I've got quite a bit of stripping going on right there. So we're going to get that out and we're going to replace it with this. So this is a slightly different setup. This is going to have 2 base points rather than the 1. So we definitely need to clean this up as best as we can. And then we'll probably place the other one right over here so that the toilet paper itself sort of covers the area of... So this really isn't the best small area to do this project in, but it'll have to do for now. So I've got the anchors out. It doesn't look all that pretty right now. So what I'm actually going to do is grab my sanding block and just sort of sand off anything that's loose. And just sort of get in those holes a little bit. See, I see a few pieces here of stray. So we're going to clean those out just a little. All right, that should be good enough. I'm going to grab my compound here that we said we were going to use. And I'm going to grab one of my smaller sort of plastic putty knives. And I'm just going to start working some of this into these holes. Try and get a good backing there. Get myself a little bit more. Really try to work it deep into that hole, because again, it's a small hole and there's nothing really behind it. I keep working that in there. And then I'm going to grab my bigger putty knife and try and work across it a few times and see how it's setting up. So it still looks a little high there. I'm going to grab some more. Really force it in there. And then go lightly, very lightly, try and find those high spots and stretch them out. So you see some of these lines I'm getting in here, probably because there's a little bit of either stuff in my mud, in my compound, or I'm picking up stuff as I go that is messing with how flat my putty knife thing here is. So we're going to stretch this out a little bit more. So you can still see our 2 holes there. But I think with that there, we're going to let this all dry. And we're going to come back later, sand it down, and see if we need to do another coat. I might thicken it up a little bit more. So I'm going to put a little more compound down, lay it on. That's good enough for now. We'll come back in a few hours or tomorrow if necessary. I'm just going to clean off the tools here. And we'll come back and see how it sets up. Sand it down, see how smooth it is. And if we're good with just one layer, we're good. If not, we'll throw a little bit more on. So thanks for joining me so far. And I'll see you guys a little bit back after about 24 hours. Actually, probably a little more. But hopefully you can see there's quite a few rough edges. We're just going to sand it down. I've got my vacuum sitting handy next to me here because this is going to create some dust. Normally, like I said, if you're going to be doing
any significant area, I would highly recommend having the mask. Since I'm just doing this little area, I'm going to go without. But we're just going to sand sort of in a circular motion. If you have any real tough areas you want to get down, you can sand basically in any direction. But understand, if you do anything consistently in one direction, you might create another ridge. So we're just going to sand this down real quick. So as expected, I've got a couple little dimples right here, right from where those screw holes were. I'm going to try and work it down just a little bit more. Make sure there's no high spots. It doesn't feel too bad, but we're going to come down a little bit more. And the dimples are pretty much all gone. I got just a hair of one right there. And now that's pretty much gone. So right now, I don't need another coat. That's literally all it took, one coat. I don't really need to stretch it any further out. I think that's pretty good. So I'm going to grab the vacuum and clean up and see if I've got the matching paint. I think I've got a little bit of sample somewhere. Grab a foam brush and just paint over it. And then I'm good to go. So let me grab the camera here. And as you can see, fairly flush with the wall there. And a close up, I mean, you can see some of the paint coming through, but it's flat, flush, no issues there, and looks pretty good. I mean, I've got some dimples and stuff from other things, but nothing from where we were working, so that's good. And I'll touch this up with paint, and that'll be it. So thanks for joining me, and I hope this was informative for any task you might take on at home.